What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, June 7th, 2019. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations here. So getting right on into it. This being June 7th, obviously tomorrow is June 8th, which is the anniversary of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty. Now, the official story is that Israel mistook this American spy ship for an Egyptian horse carrier, because as we know, Egyptian horse carriers have dish antennas stuck all over them, and claimed that it was poor weather, which photos and films taken at the time show was not the case. And bit by bit over the years, it's come on out that yes, Israel knew they were trying to sink an American ship, and the plan was they were going to frame Egypt for it in order to drag the United States into the war against Egypt and on Israel's side. And we really can never let that be forgotten. And I'm sure somewhere out there somebody's going to scream, "Oh, only anti-Semites are remembering the USS Liberty. Only the anti-Semites refuse to believe what they're told to believe." Anyway, yesterday, of course, was the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which was dramatic, but hardly decisive in the final outcome of the war. And it was rather interesting to see Donald Trump and the other NATO leaders issue a D-Day proclamation pledging never to repeat the horror of World War II and to resolve international tensions peacefully. And basically, it was a load of hogwash. So it's a load of public relations. That's all it is. We're already into World War III. So far, it's a slow motion World War III, but when you look at how many countries the United States is involved in, yeah, it's a world war. All right, there's been another incident between the United States and Russia over in the East China Sea, where there was a close encounter between a Russian warship and one of the U.S. destroyers, and each side is blaming the other. In this particular case, there is a video that was released by the Navy where apparently the U.S. Navy ship, the Chancellorsville, was following a straight course at a steady speed. They were recovering a helicopter, and this Russian ship basically came around from behind and to the right of the Chancellorsville, and then closed to what is considered an unsafe distance of approximately 50 to 100 feet. And yes, that is a very unsafe distance. So in this case, the Russian captain is clearly to blame for this one. Article coming on out of the Real News talking about this new Chinese and Russian partnership, both economic and military, and saying this is a threat to U.S. global hegemony. And it certainly is. It's arguable whether the United States could win a war against Russia or against China. But against both of them at the same time, I don't think so. All right. Meanwhile, Trump has gone and poked the Chinese dragon in the eye one more time with a $2 billion sale of weapons to Taiwan. And China is furious about that. So, again, it's a very disjointed foreign policy. We're trying to come to a trade agreement with them, and at the same time, we're selling weapons to Taiwan. We're sailing our ships through the Taiwan Straits. We're sailing warships through the South China Sea and the East China Sea. That's not the way these things are supposed to work. Over in the European Union, representatives have approved a decision to prolong the sanctions against Russia over Crimea. And the sanctions were initially supposed to be expiring right about now. Now they'll be extended until June 23rd, 2020. These sanctions were initially imposed back in 2014. So we're talking about 6 years of sanctions here, and that's not making us any friends over there. Now, here is a very interesting story that came on out from Fort Russ. Apparently, the United States has suggested a path that would lead to recognition of Crimea as part of Russia, but there's a catch. They're demanding a second referendum in Crimea supervised by the United States. Now, I bet they're already dusting off those old Diebold voting machines to get this one done. So at this point, the Russian foreign minister is saying, we don't need to go through another referendum. Crimea is now reunited with Russia. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And I'm going to grab a swig of water here. Looks like we had a good day on the stock market. Their traditional Friday happy ending. And getting back to the news. Okay. President Emmanuel Macron, probably acting as a U.S. proxy, called for wider international talks regarding Iran's nuclear and military ambitions. And Macron had said Paris and Washington both wanted to stop Tehran getting nuclear arms, which they never had and were not building. And the new talks should focus on curbing its ballistic missiles program. See, that's the problem. They had a deal at P5+1. Trump moved the goalposts. And now they want to talk Iran out of all of its weapons of deterrence. And it's not going to work. Tehran has already rejected Macron's call because Tehran understands if you agree to disarm yourself in the face of the United States, you will be invaded. We saw that with Iraq. We saw that with Syria. And we're about to see it with North Korea. That's the way the U.S. is operating. Please give up your weapons of deterrence, your nuclear weapons, your chemical weapons, your long-range missiles. We'll give you security guarantees. And then the next thing you know, there's a regime change going on. Apparently, following Tehran's rejection of talks regarding its long-range ballistic missiles, the U.S. has imposed even more sanctions on Iran. Over in Turkey, the United States is saying they will not train any more Turkish F-35 pilots because Ankara refuses to ditch the S-400 deal. Okay, so we're going to take a phone call now from Layla in Canada. Aloha, Layla. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. A lot of people who may have had their genome tested may also have used something called GEDmatch or GEDmatch. Now, after yesterday's call where I said that everyone's genome was likely already on file, I got an email from GEDmatch because I had opted out of the option to allow my information to be generally available to the public.
Yes.
This is unusual that GEDmatch has asked for consent from those people to make it available to law enforcement. One paragraph reads, there may be some users of GEDmatch who do not wish to make their information available to law enforcement. These persons, their previously uploaded kits are automatically, quote, opted out. They can use GEDmatch as always. They're asking for people to opt in to being available. Now, GEDmatch is unusual. It is a free service, and it offers numerous options of investigating one's genome that goes way back thousands of years, and these are all free. So they're not commercially motivated. I was very impressed with the fact that they asked my consent to opt in, which I obviously will not give because, I mean, there are other ways that people's genomes are available to law enforcement. But anyone who is using GEDmatch or GEDmatch, whichever way one wants to pronounce it, might want to change their settings if they did not, because this probably would not have gone to those who have opted in to make their genome open to the public. That was all. It was just to alert people that there is at least one ethical compiler of genomes out there.
Okay, and what is this? How do you spell this company?
It's uppercase GED, and then it's match, MATCH.com.
All right.
And what you do, if you've done a genome, an ancestry analysis or a genetic analysis with any of the other commercial companies, you then download your raw data and then upload the kit to GEDmatch or GEDmatch, and then you have tons of programs that you can submit, you can compare. Little things like it'll tell you whether your parents were distantly related, and numerous other things, who you've been related to, it is actually quite reliable. And again, these people are all these services are at no charge. These are people, geneticists and academics, who have specialties in genetics, who make their services available at no cost.
Okay.
So it was a wonderful service. But if somebody is already subscribed and has opted in to have all their information public so that they could be contacted by matches, you should be aware that you may not have received this. I received it only because I was listed as opted out. I was just tired of receiving tons of emails from people that I did not want to hear from, who were related to me distantly.
Yes.
So I was rather impressed, because this is the only one that I know of who was actually asked for permission to make this available to law enforcement.
Well,
I thought that was impressive. But that means that it indicates what I said yesterday, that it's very likely that everyone's genome, if they've ever, well, even when you have a child, your placenta, when they take it, they ask you to sign away the rights to your placenta so that it can be used for research. So clearly the genome, not only for yourself, but for the baby, can be extracted from that. Not to mention that they're always doing blood work when you're in a hospital anyway,
yes,
as well as other forms of tissue analysis that can then go into a data bank that can be accessed. So while hospitals may claim, now I know someone who ran the blood bank at McGill University's medical school decades ago, and he told me that they were handing over blood samples for genetic testing. And that was many decades ago. So this has been going on a long time. And as you may be aware, the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal was used by the CIA and DARPA for mind control experiments, along with numerous other institutions. And besides having worked in the hematology lab at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal, I also worked at the Allen Memorial Institute, which is where I first heard about the unethical use of not telling patients that their minds were being emptied and then filled with mind control techniques.
Well, there was a lot of interesting stories that came out of MK Ultra, and of course, the one I think is the absolute funniest is that they were running a bondage parlor out in San Francisco to find what combination of LSD and kinky sex would open up people to spill their darkest secrets. And this thing ran for like 9 years before somebody higher up in the CIA said, they're getting no results, let's shut it down.
Well, they said they're getting no results, but we don't really know what they actually found. And if this was being done in the 50s, we can only imagine what has been done since then. It's frightening to consider it. But anyway, just so people are aware, I think it's time for a defensive mode, if we haven't already clued into that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay, take care, Mike. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the news here. There is a new report out from the British government. It came out yesterday, and it accuses Israel of continued violations and human rights abuses. Of course, is always the case. Israel is out there saying, well, the Palestinians are doing the same thing. And I remember when I was a kid, they said 2 wrongs do not make a right. And if Johnny jumps off the bridge, are you going to jump off too? But it does get kind of childish out there. So they came out with this report. Now, Israel's Attorney General has refused Netanyahu's request for another delay in the corruption probes. And apparently the current deadline for the trial to start, or for the indictments to be handed down, is October 2nd. From the previously agreed upon date of July 10th. Now, Netanyahu had initially asked for an entire year-long delay, claiming his lawyers needed more time to properly prepare their defense material. But the AG said no. I think he's probably getting tired of dealing with this. Okay, there has been a video captured by CCTV, and it shows this group of masked Israeli settlers attacking a Palestinian home in the West Bank village of Kufr Yasuf. And the video was released by Israeli human rights NGO Yash Din. Shows a group of 15 illegal Israeli settlers approaching this home off Route 60 in the occupied West Bank. All are wearing balaclavas and hooded jackets, hiding their faces from the CCTV camera which captured the event. So the settlers entered the village from the direction of Tapua Outpost Zatara. They threw rocks and cement blocks at the family's home while they were inside, breaking the windows as well as the family's car windshield, which they tried to set on fire, but fortunately, didn't cause all that much damage. All right, there is a new term of craft out there in the world of questionable materials, if you will, contraband, if you will. It's called blood antiquities. You've heard of blood diamonds, you've heard of blood gold. Now it's blood antiquities. And apparently there's a bunch of antiquities from Yemen that went through an auction and brought in about $1 million. Now, some of these artifacts, which are like ancient inscriptions, statues, coins, manuscripts, they have detailed provenance information that suggests that they were properly researched and recovered and taken out of Yemen decades ago. But some of the materials being sold at the auction had little or absolutely no provenance information, raising the possibility that they had been looted during the war. Okay, interestingly enough, France has come on out with a statement saying they believe a global confrontation is emerging in the Pacific Ocean, and they promise they'll be involved. They're going to have a presence here in the Pacific. It's another reason why I'm glad Claire and I are leaving Hawaii, because it's going to get ugly. And yeah, there is I don't know if it's a global confrontation, but there's definitely a confrontation between the United States and its allies and China and its allies. Okay, North Korea has condemned a recent Pentagon report for describing it as a rogue state, calling it a hostile act that makes it clear the United States' ultimate goal is the overthrow of the regime and North Korea's warning of countermeasures. We have to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, the postal address to send a check Money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other time. The network thanks you. It really helps. We really do need your continuing support. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here. James in Tokyo, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mr. Smart, you are talking too much about the topic of genetics due to the influence of the chaos agent Layla. But I do give Layla a big call out for mentioning McGill. After me, the second most famous graduate from McGill was Captain William Shatner.
Yes.
So I give her a call out for that. And Layla, don't call back and rebuke me. I just find genetics a really boring topic. As somebody in Japan, Mike, in Japan, in America, when people ask you, like, what are you? And I'd be like, well, I'm 25% Austrian, 25% Russian, 50%, I don't know. My dad was adopted. My upper body is, I'm a Caucasian. My lower half, I'm African American. But in Japan, it's different because everybody is the same. So when they ask you, like, what are you? How do you think they answer, Mike?
They answer that they're Japanese.
No. They ask you, what are you? And the only thing they talk about is your blood type. They might say A, B,
interesting,
or O. Yeah, that is very interesting. So if they ask me that,
personally,
sometimes I joke around. Like,
I find genetics.
What's your blood type? And I might go AID. But anyway.
Personally, I find this study of genetics very interesting. I mean, it's what explains why you look like your parents, and if you don't, why you were supposed to.
It is interesting, but, you're more of a current events guy, and everybody listens to you for current events and stuff on political and economic situations, and to concentrate so much time on genetics, I don't know.
Well, I don't know that overall. I mean, if you look at the last 10 years we've been doing the radio, I don't think we've spent that much time on the genetics, but, sometimes these subjects come on up. And we're pretty open here about topics. The only things that we don't want to welcome in here is Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, chemtrails, HAARP, flying saucers, and Elvis is still alive somewhere in the Catskills.
Oh, one thing about one of those bad topics, the flying saucers. President Trump was in Japan, and he was talking to the Prime Minister Abe about doing a joint trip to the moon and Mars in a short period of time. So do you think that when Trump wanted to make the space program and everything like that, that he might declassify that maybe they have some type of advanced craft? I mean, considering that jets have technology basically hasn't changed in like 50 years, and rocket technology as well, you think there might be something coming out?
Well, NASA's developing what's called the E-rocket, which is basically a powerful microwave generator that is able to bounce the microwaves off the engine bell and generate a small amount of thrust. Now, you can't use it to get out of the gravity well of a planet, but once you're in interplanetary space and weightless, it can be used to accelerate your ship and deaccelerate your ship. As far as this idea of alien technology here on Earth, I'm absolutely convinced the universe is filled with intelligent civilizations. I just honestly can't think of a reason why they would be interested in visiting with us. And if you think about it from the terms of the energy costs, if you're going from point A to point B, it's so much energy to first of all accelerate and then deaccelerate. If you make a stop in the middle to visit with planet Earth, it doubles your fuel budget. because you're going to accelerate, then decelerate at Earth, then accelerate away from Earth, and then decelerate at your last target. So to be very honest, when you're driving down the highway, do you stop and examine every anthill that you pass? And the answer is no. And these alien civilizations, they're going to evolve right alongside their technology and to a civilization that has interstellar star travel, space travel down. We're going to look like primitives who still stick pieces of bone through our nose.
I wasn't talking about like aliens. I was just asking if there's some type of advanced technology that Trump has to mention to Abe that he might. But anyway.
All right, James, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Looking at my email, I've got a little note here that said the U.S. ship failed to promptly apply Rule 15 obligation to either alter course to port or reduce speed to pass behind the Russian ship, which was crossing on the U.S. ship's starboard bow when the encounter began. I understand what you're saying here, but what the U.S. is claiming is that they were in the process of recovering a helicopter and could not alter course. But in any event, I do think the Russians were trying to provoke the U.S. Anyway, we're going to go back to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
They're both playing chicken.
Yeah.
Should have went to... Did you notice somebody was sunbathing on the top of the Russian ship?
Well, yeah.
Mike, Xi
Yes.
Jinping said to Putin, "You're my best friend, you're my bosom buddy." You can't get more than that, right?
Yeah.
At this particular time in history, and I watched the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. It was jam-packed. It was people from Europe there, America. But the thing is, the people who are blocking business is the politicians and the military-industrial complex. They don't want there's this business to flourish between countries. It seems now it's back to like the Cold War style, our way, their way, and it's just a shame because everybody could benefit from all. Like the Russians can benefit, the United States needs to benefit, and I don't see it happening now because, and I just. With this Normandy thing, I wish they would have invited the Russians and the Chinese. I mean, that was. I think to me, that's it. Like that moment in time.
Yeah, I mean,
it for the West.
They were clearly trying to reinforce that model that Germany is our friend and Russia's our enemy, even though it was clearly the reverse during the reality of World War II. And the issue really comes down to free trade is a really good thing up to the point where you realize that some nations are going to be better at producing certain products than others, and that the money will tend to flow toward them. Now, at the end of World War II, when the United States was the only nation whose industrial base was still intact, the money flowed toward us. As the other nations rebuilt, they needed machine tools, they needed ball bearings, and they had to come to the United States. And so the money just poured on in, and the United States became very wealthy. And between that and Bretton Woods is why we had that golden age of the 1950s. Well, those days are gone now. The other countries have retooled, and the United States can't compete with many of them. Can't compete with Russia agriculturally right now, can't compete with China in terms of manufacturing, can't compete even with Taiwan in certain electronics. And so we're back to this idea of, you will buy our products. Yes, they're more expensive, they're not as good, but, if you love us, you will buy our products.
And the thing is, Mike, you're absolutely right. People just don't want to hear this. It's 2019. It's a different world. We're never going back to that world that we were the only one making stuff. It's not coming back.
Well, it all depends. It all depends on what happens in World War III. If the United States hauls off and nukes the major manufacturing centers of every other country, then yeah, we're right back in that same model.
It's going to be hard for you to go to work when your hair's falling out.
Yeah.
And you're throwing up, at that point. And, I look at just the like I said yesterday, the people in Washington, they give themselves raises, they give themselves pats on the back, they give themselves Nobel Prizes, they get Nobel Prize and they get invited to all these think tanks and they're all like Nancy Pelosi, they get paid $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 for one speech. But yet, what's happened, what's fixed for us, like the regular folk? Nothing, like no infrastructure. They said it'd take 80 years to redo to infrastructure the bridges in the country. 80. We don't have 80 years.
No, we don't.
I don't think we have 80 months, Mike. But I'm saying the people who are running this country don't give a rat's crap because, $5,000 increase for their living expenses. Well, what about everybody else? What about our living expenses? They gave Wall Street and the bankers a bailout. When are we going to get I know people don't like socialism. I'm not a big we have Social Security. That's socialism. Farm bailout was socialism that Trump did. So was the GM thing and stuff. But when are we going to get our fair share? Because we've been ripped. I think we've been ripped off, and not by the Chinese, not by the Russians or the Indians, Mike. Because Trump wants to put sanctions like tariffs on India and Australia. We're being ripped off by our own government, man. Like that's the bottom line. We're being ripped off by our own, the people that we so-called elected. But I'm telling you, Mike, I'm not voting for. This is it. Like I'm not voting for nobody else after I voted for Trump because, you know what peeves me off, Mike. When Trump comes back here, is he home to this? Is he back here yet?
I actually do not know.
Remember Rudy Giuliani was going to go to Ukraine and find out the bottom line, and then we hear that Christopher Steele is going to do a deal. Mike, it's June. If the deal I'm not going to vote for Trump anymore, but if the deal don't come by the end of the year, if I don't see any indictments and stuff, I'm not going to vote for the dude anyway, but how can you still support a system? It's all bullcrap. Like, nothing's happening. There's no arrests.
I agree. I agree. It's frustrating. All we get out of the government is a lot of talk, but nothing's being done. There's nothing concrete being done. It's even when they're talking about that southern border wall. Oh well, we're having constructive dialogue here, and we've shut down the accounts of some accused human traffickers. That's not what Trump was asking for. And yeah, they'll talk back and forth, and in the end, the border is still wide open, and the illegals are still pouring into this country, along with ISIS terrorists and potential Ebola carriers. And yeah, it's just not getting fixed, and it is very frustrating. I want to see something actually get done. I'm tired of listening to the politicians. I don't even really listen to the corporate media talking heads anymore. To the prostitutes and the correspondents, I ignore them. I want to look out the window and see something being accomplished, whether it's rebuilding the bridges or even rebuilding the levees. They had another one of those collapse along the Mississippi earlier today, which is making the flooding a lot worse. So
we can't even, Mike. We can't even repair our bridge with the Russians.
No,
we're not going to rebuild the bridge. And I watch Fox News occasionally. I don't like them. I don't like CNN, and I don't like ABC, USA Today. I don't read any newspapers. It's all crap. But remember when Sean Hannity was saying indictments are coming any day now? That was months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. You know, so I'm tired of it, man. You know, Mike, have a good show. I'm pissed off, and I'm going to have a drink.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We'll let you go here and switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Tony, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Actually, Tony and Doug dropped.
Ah, Tony and Doug dropped. All right, we'll just be that way. Okay. All right, so getting on back to the international news here. We're seeing this new partnership between Russia and China, and one of the areas in which they're cooperating is up in the Arctic, developing this new shipping lane, which is going to make the length of shipping from Asia to Europe much, much shorter, much faster, much less expensive. And the United States came on out and said, well, China's building military bases up there. They're arming, they're fortifying the Arctic. And like, why? Ice isn't really all that valuable. But Beijing is saying that's nonsense. No, we're not building military bases up there. There's no threat up there unless the U.S. brings it. Okay. Turning to our domestic politics here, many years ago, the American Psychiatric Association came up with what's colloquially referred to as the Goldwater Rule. And it was introduced after an article that stated more than 1,000 psychiatrists thought Barry Goldwater, the 1964 Republican presidential candidate, was mentally unfit for office. Now, these 1,000 psychiatrists had not talked to Barry Goldwater. They based their, you'll pardon the expression, diagnosis solely on watching him on TV. And you can't do that. There really is no way. I mean, unless the person you're watching from a distance, you know, has stripped naked and poured pancake batter all over themselves, you can't really say they're mentally unfit. So the Goldwater Rule says it's unethical for psychiatrists to offer their opinion of a public figure who they have not examined themselves. Well, we need to keep that one in mind because we're starting to see Democrats try and line up a whole raft of psychiatrists who will publicly state that Trump is unfit for office. He's mentally unfit. And they're going to host a Capitol Hill event featuring psychiatrists who will warn that President Trump is unfit for office based on his mental health. And we need to apply that Goldwater Rule. Boy, they are so desperate to get him out of office. They really are. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here to Doug in Thailand. Aloha, Doug. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, thanks for taking the call. I'm not quite as adept with the on-air thing, but James, I agree that there's some distraction on that genome stuff. That thing is as it is. But the current affairs, yeah, he's right about that. I like that guy, James. I'm calling from Thailand, but I've lived over 20 years in Taiwan, and it would be an interesting topic. They're kind of in the sandwich here, you know.
Could you repeat that last part?
They've got already a split. Well, Taiwan doesn't want to be the meat in a burger for a fight between China and the U.S.
No, that would be a very uncomfortable position to be in.
And yeah, people are intimidated. They're somewhat, reduced in capacity by the pressure that's always been there, and it's gone on a long time. I mean, China's always claimed Taiwan, and there's been an agreement that, yeah, well, Taiwan is Chinese and Taiwan is a part of China, and in fact, it did become a part of China in 1947. And the independence movement has a lot of nasty kind of characters in charge who are very much anti, mainland people,
Okay.
or something like. They're still resentful of the invasion that came to them following World War II when the communists took over and Chiang and his army went to Taiwan. I'm not giving any history lessons here, but you can imagine there's a split population as far as who supports independence, who wants to go the distance and see what can become of a united China.
Well, getting on back to something you said earlier, I don't think Taiwan is going to be the meat in a U.S. China burger, because obviously the United States, if it comes to war with China, Taiwan and the United States are going to be on the same side.
Yeah,
Hello?
but I really don't think our guys are not going to be there in that kind of a. Japan is not far away. Korea, they got, but the general feeling on the ground there is you can't count on it. There's always a little language in there, but years ago they used to say, well, we'll be right there, but they don't. And there's no sense that the U.S. is really going to come to Taiwan. That China could take it in like 3 hours, 3 days.
Well, don't forget.
There's a lot of people who like the idea that it's not happening because China doesn't need to do that. It's just going to be a mess, and it's going to be okay. Things are going to work out, and there's a greater China world that really sees it all. That this is not going to. The U.S. is not going to get Taiwan and China to fight each other.
Well,
anyways,
yeah,
it's a complex thing.
Well, don't forget that the U.S. just.
Taiwan's a great place to live. It's a very free society. They have democracy like you don't see in the world, and the people are like the friendliest people in the world. They love Americans, and well, I happen to be American, so that works for me. But they need English, and let's see, there's something good, really worth looking out for there. That yes, I'm more interested in Taiwan than the whatever nasty consequences come from authoritarian rule. But they've gone through that, and China's kind of slowly getting better too.
Well, China's someplace I always wanted to visit, but obviously. Okay. All right, Doug, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to David in San Francisco. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael. Hey, the other day I ran across a JFK article, and apparently Trump, this is one that came from a radio station. I think it was tied to Associated Press from back in 2017, October 20th of 2017. And it talks about, the headline was Trump frustrated by secrecy with JFK files. And I'm wondering if you're familiar with whether or not those JFK files got fully released.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, they've put off the final some have been declassified. There was nothing significant in them. But many of the files, of course, remain classified. And as far as I know, it's for something like 75 years. So 75 years from now, the American people will realize that, yes, John F. Kennedy, like Abraham Lincoln, was the victim of a conspiracy which included elements of the government.
Right. Well, this article ends by saying that Trump did the declassification. You're probably familiar with Dave Emery, right? And Jim D. Eugenio?
Yes.
Yeah, there was apparently Dave Emery has done maybe 25 different interviews with Jim DiGenio, and if you go over to his Spitfire list, you can hear all of them, that podcast. But man, I'll tell you, in listening to, I've probably listened to about 20 of them, and I didn't hear anything about the release of them. And those interviews happened late in 2018 and early 2019. So that's why it sparked my interest, whether or not those declassifications ever happened.
They did.
Trump.
They did. Some of the JFK files were declassified and released to the public, but there was really nothing significant in them, of course, and so the story kind of came and went.
Well, it's, when you say nothing of interest, in listening to James DeGenio, man, there were just so many weird details about, media cover-ups in it, the buyouts of various politicians. Good grief, just an amazing collection of different things, but he doesn't refer to these documents. He goes more toward the, the assassination, trying to think of the phrase for the agency that was to be the repository of the documents. But I was just wondering, I'm trying to remember, did you also write a book about Kennedy assassination?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. Anyway, listen, we got to let you go. Take a break here for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. And we're going to go right back to the phones to Art Off the Grid. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Have you heard about the Hex Wave body scanners?
Yeah. In passing. I think they use them down here at the Honolulu airport.
Okay, well, according to the Salt Lake Tribune, the Utah Attorney General and law enforcement are partnering with Liberty Defense. Now, they're going to be deploying these Hex Wave scanners, and apparently these things can be set up in such a way that you don't see them. It's like you can camouflage these things. What we're talking about here is we are talking about literally you're walking down the street and you don't even know you walk past one of these things, and some guy's sitting there with a monitor and he sees everything.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate intrusion on the public. And for this company to call themselves Liberty Defense, that is an outright affront to any true liberty-minded American.
It does seem slightly hypocritical.
This is serious, mainstream, hardcore spying. That's what this is. It's spying.
Yes.
And they're talking about deploying these things all across the country. Malls, pedestrian malls, shopping centers, you name it, anywhere you go. You go to a concert, you go to a baseball game, you go anywhere. These things are going to be everywhere. There's nowhere we're going to be able to go where they can't see right through our clothing. I'm sorry, but you know what? Maybe we should somebody should develop a lightweight, lead-lined clothing,
Yes.
designs.
Well, somebody actually,
one way or the other.
Let me insert something here. Not too long ago, somebody actually came out with a very clever idea. It was a line of T-shirts with some radio opaque printing on the inside. So when you were just standing there wearing the shirts, everything looked really normal. But when you went through the TSA scanner, there were all these messages there for the TSA to look like the Fourth Amendment, various other things like that. I don't know if they're still around, but I thought it was a really cute gag.
Oh, that is funny. I'd like to get a hold of some of those. But I was just wondering, because I've not heard anybody, and I would think RBN would be all over this kind of thing. But I've not heard anybody talking about this. And I just happened to stumble across it the other day, and I'm like, holy crap, But Anyway, if anybody's interested, if you have Facebook, if anybody wants to connect with me on Facebook, you can find me at LEE, Lee, space, Forest, Forest. And I'm always posting something, but it'd be a great way to, for people on RBN, we need to start connecting and start talking. And it seems like, Facebook seems to be the only place left that hasn't blocked or demonetized or banned or censored or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, they're doing a lot of it. They're doing a lot of it. Facebook is not immune. They are indeed part of the problem. Anyway, Art,
I know they're doing some, but they haven't gotten quite bad. But anyway, thanks, Mike. Have a great one.
All right, same to you. Happy Friday. We're going to let you go. We're talking about our domestic internal politics. And apparently, after insulting Alabama residents, Kamala Harris is headed to Alabama to beg for their votes. It's just amazing here. Now, Joe Biden's lead in the polls is shrinking. We're coming up here on the first Democratic debate. As recently as May 9th, Biden enjoyed a lead of 27 points. That lead has now dropped to 17 points as of yesterday. And Biden is now siding at 34% in the RCP average. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has remained in second place since Biden entered the race on April 25th. Now, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has gone on the attack against Joe Biden, saying that he's too mainstream. He's not progressive enough. He's not out there screaming about abortions and LGBTQ. And because he's so mainstream, he will not be able to defeat President Donald Trump in the 2020 election. I disagree with her. And I know it may be considered déclassé to disagree with a member of the House of Representatives, but I think the way Donald Trump has basically alienated his own base, I think a mainstream Democrat who's not progressive, who's not out there on the hard left, would have a very, very good chance. I'd really like to see Tulsi Gabbard get in there. I really, really would. Okay, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that the perfect Democratic candidate for 2020 needed to endorse Medicare for all, tuition-free colleges, a $15 minimum wage. They all sound good until you figure out how to pay for them. So, I mean, I think the minimum wage should go up. But in order to support that, businesses have to be made more profitable. The only way to do that is to lower taxation. But that's not going to happen. In fact, if you look at it, these new tariffs represent another hidden form of taxation. And already whatever good was accomplished by Trump's tax cuts last year, that's all been erased. Getting on back to Ocasio-Cortez, and she was at this recent town hall in the Bronx in her home state of New York, and she peddled this story that there is a conspiracy to conflate luxury items with those that are basic rights. And having just toured a public housing complex for senior citizens, she told the audience that units in the building look just like my luxury apartment. Then she went on to say, what we have been taught and what we've been conditioned is that basic rights are a luxury and a privilege when they are not. Well, she's actually right about that, but the author of this piece kind of missed that and said, is AOC saying that housing should be a constitutionally protected, government-subsidized right? Well, she wouldn't be historically wrong, because when they were writing up that Declaration of Independence, The part where it says the pursuit of happiness originally said the right to property. The phrase was originally the right to life, liberty, and property. The original plan for this country was that everybody was going to be guaranteed a small piece of property on which to build a home, kind of like the way they ran the Homestead Act. But of course, that was taken out by politicians who had dreams of being future landlords and wanting rents. And so they basically taped over this, or glued over this other strip of paper that said the pursuit of happiness, which, if you really think about it in the larger context of the Declaration of Independence, it's actually a pretty meaningless statement. All righty. Hillary Clinton is still out there flapping her gums about Donald Trump, and it still looks to me like she's considering stepping on in to the 2020 race here, especially if Biden flames out. Clinton is saying President Trump is not above the law, which sounds really, really good until you remember that she was certainly above the law relative to Title 18 with the mishandling of classified information. Little hypocrisy there. Now, yesterday we were talking about over in Arkansas how a former state senator, Linda Collins Smith, was found inside her home with a gunshot to the head, wrapped in a blanket. Apparently, neighbors had reported hearing gunshots a couple of days before. It's being treated as a murder. Well, all of a sudden, over in Norman, Oklahoma, there's a former state senator, Jonathan Nichols, was found dead of a gunshot wound inside his home. And police say the case remains under investigation. They're working with the medical examiner's office. That's just a little too cute here. So we'll keep our eyes open for more state politicians to come on in. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, good day to you. What's on my mind is a couple calls back, you had a guy talking about China. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, Michael, about China. About 12 years ago, maybe a little longer, they had a Chinese general said, if the United States knocked out half our population, you're doing us a favor. If you got rid of half the population, you'll be doing China a big favor because of the food problems.
Yeah, I'd heard that.
And if you know, Michael, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that the Chinese have, I believe it's over 200 more million men than women. You familiar with that?
Yes. Well, hang on. Let's back up. Let's back up.
Okay.
First of all, both of those cases were from a while ago. And as a matter of fact, China's population has stabilized to the point where they're relaxing the one-child rule. And as far as the imbalance between male and female, that goes back to a time, a very brutal time in China's history, where female babies were simply left to die in the streets because they weren't considered valuable. But today the population is much more gender balanced.
Yes, Michael, I don't know if you ever had a chance to watch One American News Network, but on the network today, they were talking about these women dropping anchor babies from China, Central America. I believe it's the figure of 80-some thousand anchor babies already born here since this crisis started, 3 months ago?
Yes.
Michael, they changed the electoral college right then and there. The college is gone in 20 years. There'll be no electoral college for Republicans. And you're talking about Joe Biden, Michael? Joe Biden's 77 years old. He'll be 78 years old when he takes the presidency he won. I doubt that will happen. And the only way Biden can win is if he gets white women to vote for him. And Trump's got to dummy up because Biden is a socialist. No matter how you think he's to the center, he's as bad as Bernie on a lot of issues. So that's the only way Trump is going to win this. He's got to go to these colleges, wake these young females up about what is communism, what is socialism, because evidently it's not working. Venezuela, it's not working. It's absolutely not working. As far as the anchor babies, Michael, that's going to continue on until I know what happened today with with the Mexican. But I don't understand this, Michael. Why didn't they put those troops down on that Mexican-Guatemalan border 25 years ago? Why didn't the United States pay however billions of dollars to put 30,000 Mexican troops on that southern border? And this would have never happened.
We don't even need to do that.
What's going on with that?
We don't even need to do that. All it would take to stop this flood of illegal immigrants coming into this country is to cut off the free stuff. Because when you give an illegal immigrant food, water, driver's license, whatever, you are in violation of Title VIII. And if you
totally agree, Michael.
If you employ an illegal immigrant, you are in violation of Title VIII. If you house or transport an illegal immigrant, you are in violation of Title VIII. All it would take would be to enforce the existing laws, okay, and we could start to get a handle on this problem without having to spend a lot of money on it. Unfortunately, Congress apparently doesn't even know the existing laws. I mean, Mazie Hirono here in Hawaii, apparently it was a surprise to her that it's actually a crime to step across our border without authorization. So they say, well, we need a new law. We're going to pass a new law. We don't need to pass new laws. We need to look at the laws we already have and say, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Title VIII for the illegal immigrants, Title 18 for Hillary Clinton.
Michael, Hirono's crazy. Can you imagine if 10,000 Americans were to go sneak into Mexico and demand they get Mexican citizenship? What would happen if they were trying to sneak in, go south of the border? Americans.
Yeah.
They want free handouts. What would happen in Mexico?
They get tossed in prison.
They get tossed in prison. That's correct. So, and as far as this anchor baby crap is, like I told you for months, if Donald Trump does not stop this sanctuary cities, and he doesn't put a mandatory, whatever he has to do as the chief executive of this country, with sanctuary cities, we're going to lose our country for sure in the next 10 years or sooner. Until I see Trump arrest
We're losing it right now.
She says Donald Trump should be arrested. Huh?
We're losing it right now. I mean, this is not the country that I was born into. Between the flood of illegal immigrants, the migrants, the surveillance, all of it. This is not the country that I was born into. I don't even recognize this place anymore.
I totally agree with you, Michael. Michael, I think I've told you in the past. I got to tell you again. I'll keep telling you. Here in South Florida, we don't have one white Anglo male on the commission. Broward County only has like 6 left. I mean, it's a total wipeout of our. They've literally taken over our government locally. It's unbelievable. And I know, Dade County's population, Broward's numbers are dwindling fast. I mean, we're down to like 11, 12%, and then Dade, Broward County's at like 41, 42% Anglo. It's over. It really is. It's totally over. And Michael, you got this crazy Bezos. His real name is Jurgensen. I don't know if you're familiar with that. His name is Jurgensen. He went to high school over here in South Florida. His daddy's name was Jurgensen, and now he wants to spend. He's saying we got to get to the moon. Otherwise, because when the world blows up, we can colonize Mars. Did you see that about Bezos?
Yeah.
He wants to colonize the moon, and then for the moon, he wants to colonize Mars. Yeah, maybe a good idea. I don't know. But that guy's another character. You know how he started, Michael? He started selling books in his car. He had an SUV. I remember seeing him, and I remember seeing that vehicle. That's how he started here in South Florida, Amazon.
Well, good.
His real name was Jurgensen. The father owned the bike shop in Phoenix. That's his real name, Jurgensen.
Okay.
Sure is. But, Michael, like I said, we'll see what's going on with the Chinese tariffs and the Mexican tariffs. But I'll tell you what, to me, the bigger situation is Mexico. Trump's got to win on Mexico. He can lose on China, but he's got to win on Mexico. He's got to stop this invasion. Otherwise, look at Texas. Texas is almost a blue state now, Michael.
Yeah,
very close to being blue, if not already.
They're turning California blue.
North Carolina is going to be blue. They're all going blue because the Democrats knew exactly what to do. Flood this country. All these illegals. They pandered to the blacks. And Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He wasn't even a Democrat. They were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. But here, Donald Trump's a racist. He's this and that. He's in the party of Lincoln. It's unbelievable what's going on in this country. Oh, and by the way, Michael, they're still now they're starting to talk about the murder rate in Chicago again.
Yes.
For like 8 weeks, they stopped it because of Smollett. But now that Smollett case is grinding down, Now, I see on the news now, George was reporting on it, they're starting to talk about the crime rate in Chicago again.
Yeah, it's insane.
Unbelievable.
It's just insane.
It's insane. Yes, it is. It's absolutely... The demon rats have got a hold of this country. That's their modus operandi is socialism, Bolshevikism. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
Exactly what they want to do. No question about it.
They've turned this country into a copy of the Soviet Union, and like the Soviet Union, it's heading for a collapse.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Maybe Bezos is onto something. We got to get to the moon quickly so we can get to Mars.
Well,
I don't know.
Probably that's for Bezos and his ultra-rich friends, but remember when they opened up the New World? You know, they sent a few people over who bred and grew a new population, but the vast majority were left behind in Europe. And that'll be the same thing here on Earth. The vast majority of us will be left behind. Anyway, listen, Tom, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And talking about the economic news here, we're seeing this trade war, and a lot of people are very concerned. It could become the equivalent of an economic World War III. And the only people who will ultimately benefit from it are those who are striving for more globalization. And the idea is, in order to institute centralization on a global scale, which means one giant bank to rule them all, they need an all-encompassing crisis that can be blamed on nationalism, protectionism, and free market dynamic. They need a threat that will affect and terrify billions of people into demanding intervention by international organizations such as the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements, as well as a rationale to introduce monetary umbrella actions, such as the induction of the special drawing rights basket system as a replacement for the US dollar. Okay, here is why that may not work. Most people who are paying attention are understanding that the economic problems we're dealing with all go back to how private central banking functions, which is to create money out of thin air and lend it into circulation at interest, thereby creating more debt than money with which to pay the debt. So why would anybody, even if they're in a crisis, say, let's do that all over again? I think in the crisis, people are going to go back to their governments and say, we want a government-issued, value-based currency that this nation started with, because it works for the nation and it works for the people. Or at least I would like to hope that's what's going to happen. Okay, gold has jumped to $13.45 per ounce. And kind of an interesting thing. The U.S. only created, so they say, 75,000 jobs in May. David Morgan is saying there's no place else to go but gold and silver. Peter Schiff is out there saying rate cuts will stimulate inflation, not the economy. And I think he's certainly right about that one. Russian President Putin believes that the current model of world economic relations is in crisis, even though the global economy has been growing recently. And he says, formally, the recent growth of the global economy is marked by positive values. In 2011 to 2018, the annual growth averaged 2.8%. In recent years, it was slightly more than 3%. But in our opinion, the leaders of states, we all need to frankly admit, despite this growth, the existing model of international economic relations, unfortunately, is still in crisis. Well, he certainly got that one right, especially with Trump out there throwing sanctions every which way and just absolutely disrupting trade all over the globe here. Now, Russian agricultural exports will continue to grow, and they're expected to reach $45 billion within the next 5 years. And apparently, they're getting ready to replace U.S. agricultural products in China. And this is more than just Russia and China thumbing their nose at the U.S. China doesn't like GMO. And right now, it's getting increasingly impossible to find anything grown in the United States that isn't contaminated by GMO. Now, Putin also came on out and made a comment regarding the Huawei situation, saying that the U.S. attempt to push Huawei from global market is the first sign of a looming tech war. And yeah, he's basically saying they're trying to push Huawei out of the global market. It's a turf war, like between two rival mafia gangs. You know, you get up to 3rd Street. No, you only get up to 2nd Street, and, you know, get out the Tommy guns. That's exactly what's going on here. It's a turf war. It's got nothing to do with security. It has to do with the fact that the U.S. wants to sell U.S. products, even though they're inferior and more expensive. So they're going to muscle Huawei out of being the competition. Over in Italy, they're looking to launch a euro parallel currency. And this is something that's been kind of brewing for years. And it's in response to the fact that Eurozone officials and the European Central Bank have basically held the individual countries like Greece and Portugal in an iron grip. And Italy is now saying, we don't want to be shackled to the EU and the ECB by being forced to use their currency, so we're going to come up with our own. What a wonderful little idea. Okay, we've got to take another break for commercials here, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go to the phones to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you were mentioning the toy wars.
Yes.
Right? That's the craziest thing I ever heard.
No, it's not crazy at
But
all.
it's
I
true.
mean, that's exactly what's going on. The United States can't compete with these other countries technologically, and so they're just going to act like mafioso and say, you know, we get to sell here and you got to stay on. It's like when you're driving down the street and you're seeing all those gang sign tagging all over the walls. That's basically telling the various gangs who's allowed to sell drugs in that neighborhood.
Yep. Yeah. Like the 5G is just, you know, they're years ahead of the rest of the world, basically.
Well, it's not
Literally.
just being the 5G itself. It's the fact that Huawei makes a superior product at a lower cost.
Yeah. And they also, if I'm not mistaken, I was reading a bit about it, they also manufacture the silicon behind it. So, you know, does Canada? Nope. Does the United States? Nope. Who does? They do. They got it all wrapped up, including the operating system.
Well, they're moving to their own operating system. They had been using the Android, but now apparently, yeah, because of all of this hostility, Huawei has been working on their own proprietary smartphone operating system.
Yep, and they have their own back doors, I bet, you know. So,
well,
you know,
everybody's got a back door these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and another thing, Mike, about these cell phones, in my opinion, it's a mental illness. We've reached the point where this stuff is now, I think there are a lot of people with mental illness. You just can't get this stuff out of their hands. It's insane. I don't have one, I don't use one, and I don't want one. I don't want someone phoning me all the time or texting me or bothering me with, you know, nonsense. I don't understand it, Mike.
Well, there's a little bit of good news there, because apparently the FCC is now authorizing the phone companies to automatically block robocalls from even reaching your phone in the first place.
That's a good thing.
That's a very, very good thing. I mean, on my little iPhone, and I'm enjoying my iPhone, I really do like it. I get more robocalls and telemarketers than I do any other kind of call.
Yeah. We all know how that occurs, everything's monitored. But I just don't get it. Honestly, Mike, I just don't understand why anybody would want to have one of these things in their hand. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Well,
so,
I'm enjoying mine.
Those are my 2 cents.
I'm enjoying mine, and yes, there's a downside. It's like the Force. There's a light side and a dark side, and I'm involved with the light side, and the government is involved in the dark side. And I would like it if the government would mind its own business, but that isn't a problem with the technology. That's a problem with the government, because
Yes.
I think for the most part, technology and engineering and scientific advancement are generally a good thing. It is the uses to which it is put to by those who are in control that determine whether or not it's good or evil.
Yeah, and what scares me is the way things are shaping right now. With the social credit scores in China, it's coming here. I mean, I can see it coming to Canada very quickly. I don't know about the United States, but and then of course there's the whole chipping of people with and all the cashless society and all that stuff. But that's still down the road. But it's here. The ability to do these things is here.
Well, just because
Crazy.
you have the ability to do something doesn't mean you're obligated to do it. And unfortunately, we seem to have this attitude in this country that, hey, we can make this happen. Let's just run ahead and do it. Facial recognition is a really good example of it. Oh, we've got this computer system that can recognize people, identify people by their faces. Let's start marketing it and selling it to the airports and the bus stations and cities. And it's not even really working properly, which is why I'm glad Congress is actually stepping on in and saying, wait a minute, there have to be some rules, because these things have generated massive numbers of false arrests.
Imagine being one of those people.
Yeah, it could be a really unnerving experience. And the current attitude is, better to falsely arrest 500 people than let one guilty person go get away. But in this country, the attitude used to be better to let 100 guilty people go free than to harm a single innocent person.
Yep, the tables have turned, Mike.
Yep.
Tables have turned. Anyways, I appreciate your time. You have a good show. I'll be listening in. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Jason in Colorado. Aloha, Jason. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm a farmer out here in southeast Colorado. We farm a fairly large piece of land. We're running cattle out here, and we're just kind of wondering, where do we fit into this equation? It's not looking good, Mike.
Well, where you fit into the equation, I mean, obviously you are a food creator, and that's going to put you in a very good position, unless the government steps on in and imposes price controls. But great that you're living on a farm, great that you're raising cattle, because I think that's going to be in serious demand, because we are looking at some global food shortages.
Well, it's, now money's so cheap that everything's common. Everything's common. So we get X amount of dollars per bushel for grain like that. And then, you can make 50 loaves of bread from a bushel of wheat. A bushel of wheat is $4.75.
Wow. That is good.
Well, diesel is fairly expensive per gallon. And, we're really, getting, I figured up with my dad last night when we were trying to do our taxes, we're getting 4% of the total worth of the grain that we sell over the price of retail.
Yeah. It does seem like this country's been taken over by the middlemen, where you have those who produce the product are barely getting paid, whether it's you at your farm or somebody flipping burgers at the McDonald's. And those who simply convey the product from its point of manufacturing to its point of sale, they seem to get the lion's share of the money. And that seems to be a common feature all across our society, that people who are not involved with the actual creation of the product or the or the delivery of the product to the final user, that somehow they're winding up with a big chunk of the money from it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And there will become a point where people that have assets, then they will just sell their assets and they won't do it anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine people getting discouraged and saying it's just not worth it. In fact, it's already been happening where other farmers are simply saying they can't make ends meet, and they sell the farm and they go off and they retire somewhere.
Well, there's people now that are looking into going into different trades, maybe even HVAC work or being an electrician, that they would sell their assets and move to town, and then it would be bought up by corporate farms, and they would go ahead and probably use illegal labor to farm that ground more efficiently, and people are just abandoning the countryside.
Well,
and there's lots of work in town.
There's also a lot of automation there, and it's like I said earlier in the show. This is just not the country I was born into, because I grew up in farming country myself, and
Sure.
yeah, and I remember what it's like. It's not easy to be a farmer, but it does seem like in a lot of cases the odds are getting stacked against small family farms. In an attempt to drive them out of business so they can be gobbled up by the big corporate farms.
Right. No, I understand that. And as well, I would ask you, I have a lot of faith in your foresight and your vision in that. What do you expect agriculture to look like in 20 years, Mike?
I am expecting it to be heavily automated. This idea that we need the illegal immigrants to pick the crops is an outmoded idea. And
yes,
I'm expecting there to be a lot more chemicals, a lot more genetic engineering, and it's all about maximizing profit. I think a big concern we have to look at is soil exhaustion, for which they'll simply say the solution is more chemicals.
Well, more chemicals are never the answer.
No.
We'll all be eaten like cattle.
Yep.
Mike. Well,
like Soylent Green.
Have a nice day. I appreciate you taking my call. I'm just, thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you and good luck. And hey, since you're in Colorado, why don't you put in a patch of that marijuana over there by the tomatoes?
Well, we've already got that going.
Oh, okay.
So it should be fine.
All right, great.
Well, it's a remedy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Remedy. Well, we don't go to town or live 30 miles from town, and unless we get bit by a rattlesnake or run over by the tractor, we really just don't bother with them guys. There's not really any reason. So, but at any rate,
I got to tell you, it sounds to me like you have close to a perfect life there. And if I were a young man, I'd love to trade places with you. And
that's very discouraging. It's very discouraging.
You should be sitting in this chair.
Well, thank you for taking my call. You have a nice day.
You're welcome there. And I think right now we're at an age, I would say that pretty much the bottom 99% of all Americans are feeling very discouraged about the future, about where all the wars are going, about what the economy's doing. The news just always seems to be about how everybody is working harder and achieving less, and that was never supposed to be.
Well, we're trying to make America great again. And,
yes.
It's going poorly. So, yeah, and they would send our kids to war still to keep their money system going, and it's disgusting.
It absolutely is. I mean, when I heard Trump say "Make America Great Again," I thought we were talking about rebuilding our manufacturing, which used to be the best in the world, about, support for our agricultural sector so that we could once again be the breadbasket to the world. But
be a strong country.
Yeah, to be an internally strong, self-sufficient country with plenty of product that other countries wanted to buy. To me, that is greatness.
Yes. Well, how could it not be great? You like that.
But unfortunately, we have people like John Bolton, whose idea of greatness is bombing the heck out of somebody.
Well, that's where the money's at. The money's in war, isn't it?
Well, the money is in war for those who make the weapons, but they're starving the rest of the country to do it. I mean, we're literally living in a wartime economy. They don't want to admit it.
Well, sure.
But we are.
Well, we live in a country that's run by sociopaths. That's, they have no compassion for other people. They probably couldn't even do it if they had to. So, my granddad used to say, he said, blue-collar criminals go to jail and white-collar criminals go to Washington.
That's true. My grandfather said the same thing.
Yes. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you what, I've taken up enough of your time. You have a nice day. Just keep doing what you're doing. We sure appreciate you. Sure do. So.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with your cattle, and good luck with your other products there as well. So, Jason, thanks a lot. We're going to let you go.
Thanks for chatting with me, Mike. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, the phone lines are open again, and let's see. Apparently, Cyprus has signed a $9 billion contract with Israel to extract gas from what's called the Aphrodite gas field. This is a renegotiated contract with Dutch, British Shell, U.S.-based Noble, and Israeli company Delek. And that's kind of a positive and optimistic thing for them to be doing, because oil just had its worst run since 2008. Meanwhile, Bloomberg is plunging $500 million into an effort to close all of the nation's remaining coal plants by 2030 and put the United States on track toward a 100% clean energy economy. Okay, Michael, what are you going to replace the coal plants with? See, this is where I get really upset with the liberals, because they'll say, well, we're going to shut down, using petroleum, and we're going to shut down the coal. Okay, what are you going to put in place of them? And you get that blank stare. The new technology must be developed first before you start shutting down the old technology. In fact, that's the only way old technology has ever been replaced, is by a more attractive new technology becoming widely available. But for the liberals, it's like they're burning their bridges behind them before they have another one built in front of them. And that is a path to disaster. Global semiconductor sales plunged 24% from the peak, the deepest percentage plunge since the financial crisis, deepest plunge ever. That's not looking good here. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. When we come back, a positive up story. I finally found one, and you're going to love it. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right to the phones to Terry in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, was that James Corbett that called from Tokyo this morning?
Did not identify his last name. Didn't sound like him.
Okay. Art talked about those new scanners that you walk by, you don't even know you're going to get scanned, and all of a sudden they got everything that's on your body, I would think a compelling case could be made for that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States.
Our government has completely abandoned the Fourth Amendment, or they wouldn't be poking into our cell phones and our computers without warrants. I mean, the government views the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as a joke. Remember, George W. Bush said it's just a blankety-blank piece of paper? That's the attitude of the government. And now they're chipping away at our First Amendment. You've got Ron DeSantis signing that ridiculous piece of legislation down in Florida, saying that you can't criticize Israel. That's a clear violation of our First Amendment right to freedom of expression. And I don't understand why somebody isn't already on the way to the Supreme Court to get a ruling on this.
Well, that's my point. I mean, we've got to try to do something about it. Otherwise, they're just going to keep going, you know?
Oh, yeah.
If we don't stand up, I don't have financial resources to do it, but maybe a coalition of people, you know. Of course, you got to wake them up first, and that's where you come in. You wake people up, and that's the first step. And there's a long way to go on that one.
There's a long way. You know, I was kind of expecting that Larry Klayman over at Freedom Watch might be carrying the banner on this First Amendment situation. But when I went over to Freedom Watch, apparently he's gone off on a tangent regarding secret government UFO files, which I think cheapens his image, but that's just me. Anyway, listen, Terry, got to let you go. I got one more story I want to get to before the top of the hour, and the lovely Lady Claire. Over in Kansas City, Missouri, they had a small population of homeless veterans living in the streets, and I say had because after 2 years of planning, they built a little tiny town for the homeless veterans. And they built these 13 tiny homes, 4 family units and 9 single units. All are fully functional. Not only will these veterans have a place to call home, they will also have access to classes on how to manage finances, cook, stay healthy, and overcome substance abuse. Well, I'm glad that somebody is doing something about our homeless veterans, because these are people, whether you agree with the wars or not, and I certainly do not, those who put on that uniform and served, and they come on back, and they're simply abandoned. The government spends all kind of money teaching them how to be soldiers and how to be killers and how to operate the weapons, and they spend basically nothing when they get back on how to reintegrate to society. So, congratulations to Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, there is the music. It's time for us to take a station identification break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by the lovely Lady Claire. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire. And Lady Claire, what's the first thing you want to talk about?
Well, I think that this falls under the category of you can't make this stuff up. Yesterday, the top U.S. commander in the Middle East, General Frank McKenzie, told interviewers on Thursday that he believes Iran remains an imminent threat to U.S. forces.
Hold it. Got to click over here.
Thank you. He dismissed the idea that a U.S. military buildup in the area had in any way diminished the perceived threat.
Well, so let's have more military buildup.
Yeah, and he says, I don't believe the threat has diminished, McKenzie told interviewers, and adding that it probably has evolved in certain ways. Now, those comments stand in stark contrast to Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan, who recently declared Iran deterred by the U.S. buildup. Now, to say that the Pentagon has not been very transparent is sort of saying, like, a coconut pie is rarely transparent in their estimation of the threats, so it is really difficult to judge the differences in assessments or validity. General McKenzie, however, suggested Iran or its proxies could attack at any moment. And of course, since no one in either the military or holding elected office can tell the American people about what specific Iran threat represents right now, Mike, you and I both know what the heck is going on here. We're being set up, we're being groomed
yes,
for some kind of an horrific false flag operation.
Or maybe they're just going to haul off and say, we have to go on in there.
Yeah.
There's going to be a big lie. I mean, we've heard already they're out there saying, Iran is weaponizing uranium. And with a hard effort could have a bomb in just 6 months.
That was so stupid. Anyone who knows science, and the former IAEA guy who said that, he should have a hand spanked gently, but come on.
He apparently, when he was with the IAEA, he was openly hostile to their conclusions about Iran, which means he was a ringer. Somebody got him on inside there to try and steer the IAEA into a certain agenda. But again, especially after Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas, we, the American people, are not going to go into another war without some ironclad proof that whoever is being attacked has actually done something bad to this country.
And the thing that really kind of got my goat about Mackenzie, there is one word that he used twice, and he said, I believe, and then he said it again to amp up, I believe. Believing when you don't have the factual knowledge, Michael, is a really dangerous thing and could set this country just on course for a real horrific, head-to-head clash with a lot of people out there.
When I was a little kid, I believed in Santa Claus.
I know you did, and then you proved Santa Claus was...
Up until I proved that he didn't.
Tell the people that. That's
a Christmas story.
All right, but it's funny. And apparently, getting back to the Russiagate, Mueller was caught in another deception. Key Russia link exposed as an informant for the U.S. and Ukraine. And this is called by many in the intelligence world deception by omission.
Yes.
And apparently Ukrainian businessman, and I'm going to try not to butcher the pronunciation, Konstantin Kilimuk, who worked for Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, is tied to Russian intelligence. But the hysterical thing is, Mike, hundreds of pages of governmental documents, which special counsel Mueller possessed since 2018, describe Kilimuk as a sensitive intelligence source for the U.S. State Department who informed on Ukrainian and Russian matters.
Everybody's a spook.
Lord, why Mueller's team omitted that part of the Kilimuk narrative from its report and related court filings is not known. But the revelations come as the accuracy of Mueller's Russian conclusions face increased scrutiny. And this incomplete portrayal of Kilimuk is so important to Mueller's overall narrative that it has raised in the opening of his reports. And this states the FBI assesses Kilimuk to have ties to Russian intelligence. Mueller's team input that on page 6, putting a very sinister light on every contact Kilimuk had with Manafort, the former Trump campaign manager. Mike, absolutely flipping unbelievable.
Well, the question is, for whom was Kilimuk working?
Yeah.
And if they thought that he was a threat to the campaign, why didn't they tell the campaign?
Yeah.
Or was he there, in fact, to help bring the campaign down?
Yeah, and that's a question we're never going to get answered, I don't think.
Well, maybe not.
And,
anyway, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So what is your next story?
Well, apparently Venezuela suffered a mass internet outrage due to outage due to fiber cut. Now, Mike, I know these things can happen accidentally, but to me the real question is, was it an accident or sabotage?
Well, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago when Venezuelan computers suffered a massive hack attack that came, in theory, from the United States, routed through Colombia. So I would say that, yes, probably this is an act of sabotage. And whether it's just an attempt to annoy and harass the government, or if it's in fact preparatory for something that's going to happen over the weekend. Because I would imagine that if there's going to be a military operation going into Venezuela, that taking the internet down within Venezuela would be a logical first step.
Yeah, I would imagine so too. Let's go back to U.S. Mideast policy. We should say the Israeli Middle East policy, which Donald Trump has outsourced to Tel Aviv.
How about we call it Israeli?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So we've got the latest move against the regime in Tehran, and the U.S. has put sanctions on Iran's petrochemical industry on Friday, today. They sanction a number of companies, the Persian Gulf Petrochemical Industries Company, PGPIC, and 39 of its subsidiaries over its financial support for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. PGPIC and its subsidiaries hold 40% of Iran's petrochemical production capacity and are responsible for 50% of Iran's petrochemical imports.
Exports.
Yes, thank you. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said, by targeting this network, we intend to deny funding to key elements of Iran's petrochemical sector that provide support for the IRGC. Now, this is really punishment over and above, because a lot of what people buy that are American are medically needed or medically sensitive. And on Monday, Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif tweeted out a video of an Iranian mother said she could not get a new prosthetic limbs for her kid due to U.S. sanctions. You know,
see, the problem is the boy is growing.
Yeah.
And if you are missing a leg and you're a small child and you're growing, you have to constantly be getting new prosthetic limbs.
Yeah.
Although I understand some, well, I mean, basically the leg is growing in diameter, so you have to get a refit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that these cuts are hurting people like this mom and her kid, you know, I am very uncomfortable with it. And oh yes, Trump is planning to declare new national emergency to impose tariffs on Mexico.
Well, before we go into that, I want to back up here to the imposition of these new tariffs on Iran, because we talked about this a little bit in the show earlier. And it may have been in response to the fact that Iran is resistant to the idea of a new deal regarding its long-range ballistic missiles.
Yeah, but that was never a part of the P5+1.
It never was. And even if this is a new deal, which is what Macron is suggesting, why would Iran enter a new deal with anybody when the United States unilaterally broke the last one?
Yeah, we can't be trusted, and this is a sad thing.
Well, we can be trusted. The U.S. government can't be trusted.
That's
U.S.
what I'm
government
saying.
speak with forked tongue.
Yes.
According to Elizabeth Warren.
Yes. But this is the problem. You can't throw out a treaty like that and expect people want to come back to you for another renegotiated treaty, because what happens when that gets thrown out? You know, it just, I can understand Iran's upset with the U.S. having done this, coupled with all of these sanctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's awful.
It really is. Now, the P5+1 deal was an easy deal for Iran to go along with because they weren't building nuclear weapons. They had no plans to build nuclear weapons. So, sure, we'll sign this agreement. You know, we'll limit our uranium stockpile to what we need to power our reactors. You'll lift the sanctions, and we'll all go home happy. Then the U.S. hit Iran with more sanctions and came on back and said, it's not enough. We want the ballistic missiles. And Iran, of course, is looking at other countries where they allowed their weapons of deterrence to be negotiated away, like Iraq and Syria, and then they were immediately invaded. And so Iran understands if they give up those long-range ballistic missiles, they will come under attack at some point.
They're going to be toast. They know that. I would like to sort of move on to new national emergency, which Trump is going to declare, to impose tariffs on Mexico. Now, according to the document, the new emergency is necessary due to, and I'm quoting, the failure of the government of Mexico to take effective action to reduce the mass immigration of aliens illegally crossing into the United States through Mexico. Now, this is going to follow on the heels of a February emergency declaration, which Trump used to justify sending National Guard troops to support Customs and Border Protection, CBP, at the southern border. Now, the draft document kind of indicates that the White House believes that imposing the tariffs under the February emergency declaration might not pass legal muster. But it remains unclear if a final decision has been made to invoke another state of emergency. The White House was not answering questions about that. Mike, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, the tariffs are going to hit us all in the wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a caller who called on in yesterday and said, well, just stop buying Mexican agricultural produce at the supermarket.
Oh, that's tough. I mean, hello.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a report today about just how much agricultural produce comes up here from Mexico, and it's almost every strawberry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
lettuce.
Yeah, if we stop buying Mexican agricultural produce, we start to go hungry. And on this island, we start eating each other after about 3 months. So it's not as easy as that. But it means that when we go to the supermarket and we fill up our basket, the prices are going to go even higher. And we're already seeing prices going up just from inflation and other issues. The Chinese tariffs are having an impact on prices. Now we're going to have Mexican tariffs. And all of these tariffs have already completely erased any benefit from the Trump tax cuts of last year. As if there were really any benefits for anybody not already worth millions of dollars.
Talking about agriculture, this gets me into a different part of the story here. Apparently, the United States uses 85 pesticides outlawed by other countries. And apparently, harmful poisons shunned everywhere account for a quarter of all the U.S. pesticide use. Now, they're using 85 pesticides that have been banned or being phased out in the European Union, China, or Brazil, according to a peer-reviewed study published today by the academic journal Environmental Health. And apparently in 2016, the United States was using 322 million pounds of pesticides that are banned in the EU, accounting for more than 1/4 of all agricultural pesticides used in this country, according to the study.
Oh, why ban them? They make money, and that's all that
and
really
they contribute
matters.
To political campaigns, right?
And if they make people sick, well, then that's good for our friends over in the medical industrial complex.
Yes. And one of the persons involved with this, Nathan Donnelly, a senior scientist with the Center for Biological Diversity, said, "It's appalling that the U.S. lags so far behind these major agricultural powers in banning harmful pesticides. And the fact that we're still using hundreds of millions of pounds of poisons other nations have widely rejected as too risky spotlights our dangerously lax approach to phasing out hazardous pesticides." And what it did, the study compared the approval status of more than 500 pesticides used in outdoor application in the world's fourth largest agricultural economies, the U.S., EU, China, and Brazil. And, you think about Brazil and all the problems that they're having, and yet their legislative bodies...
Claire speaks, take two.
Sorry about that, yes. Had the horse sense to make sure that this stuff is out of the food chain. We don't have that, and I'm really annoyed by that.
No, we don't. We live in a nation where the government is perfectly okay with corporations using toxic, dangerous products as long as it makes money and they get their cut in the taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now I'd like to sort of bop back over to the Middle East, and this comes to us from globalresearch.ca. If you've not looked at this or kind of kicked the tires on this website, go do it. It's worth it. I have a lot of respect for a lot of people who post there. And this article talked about malicious intent with President Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner being a deliberate ignorance of Palestinian history. And Kushner has said this in public, that Palestinians are incapable of governing themselves.
Rudyard Kipling, white courtesy phone.
Yeah.
Rudyard Kipling, white courtesy phone.
Yeah. And Hatim Kanach, a Palestinian doctor and author of A Doctor in Galilee, The Life and Struggle of a Palestinian in Israel, and a collection of short stories entitled Chief Complaint, doesn't know what to make of, apparently Kushner did not know what to make of Rivlin's slip of the tongue in addressing the guest Mohammed Kirwan, the chairman of the Council of Muslim Leaders in Israel, after an iftar breaking the fast meal the Israeli president hosted at his home in celebration of Ramadan. Rivlin says to the Palestinian with a straight face, apparently your home is my home. And Kaneha images Sheikh Kirwan responding.
Imagines.
Yes, imagines, thank you. Sheikh Kirwan responding, had you left it standing in Damun, Kirwan's village, you would be welcome to enter it. Kinawa goes on to try to exonerate Rivlin of any conscious malicious intent. And the author of this article said that they wish they could do for Jared Kushner's calculated, ignorant and Orientalist comment in an interview about the deal to liquidate the Palestinian claim to their homeland. And folks, this is all what it's about, to liquidate Palestinian claim and the right of return.
That's exactly what it is. Israel has been starving the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're coming up on this meeting in Qatar,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to basically look for investment in Palestine to start rebuilding their economy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to come on and say, see, good things happen when you work with us. And now the other
Mm-hmm.
side of this is that you have to surrender your right to return.
And your homeland, yeah.
And your homeland.
Yep.
Forget this two-state solution thing. We're going to sort of consolidate some of this land and call it New Palestine, but you're still going to be under Israeli control.
Yeah.
In other words, they want to turn Palestine into the equivalent of an American reservation.
Yeah. And apparently Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, said in an interview that the Palestinians aren't yet able to govern themselves, and declined in this interview to promise them when an independent state
draws
them an independent state.
Okay.
And folks,
All right.
I've been having a little trouble with my vision. Sorry.
All right. Well, we're going to try and fix that during the commercial break.
All right.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We've got a caller on the line. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I want to thank you both for letting me call again, because it's only a one call rule. But Claire, first of all, you're looking pretty good.
Thank you.
Looking good.
Thank you.
I got an email saying exactly the same thing.
Oh, thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean you. But Claire, what do you think of what's going on, with the Belt and the Road and Xi Jinping saying to Putin he's his best friend and his bosom buddy?
Well,
there is stuff.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's your show.
Okay. What I wish would be that the people in D.C. would not see this as an obstacle, but see it as an opportunity. I've sort of developed a trademark thought, and it's cage the rage and engage. Why can't America learn to become more competitive so that we would be able to be a part of the Belt and Road? Because it looks to me looking down the road of history, Dustin, that this is an intelligent, really excellent way to cause trade to happen. And
that's
to
exactly
prevent
the problem.
wars.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at, it's the geography that's the problem.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, because the United States is way over here,
Mm-hmm.
and you have got Asia and Europe and everything all bunched up over here.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is no way the United States can be a part of the One Road, One Belt initiative. And even worse, there's no way they can compete with it.
Yeah, that's the big problem.
And so that's why they're trying to figure out a way that they can shut it down, just like they're trying to shut down the Nord Stream 2.
Oh, yeah.
Because all these other countries on Earth are finding ways of getting along without having to go through the United States of America. Either
Or
it's currency,
the petrodollar.
Yeah, either it's currency or it's shipping. And what Putin and Xi Jinping are signaling is a new close alignment between Russia and China as a challenge to U.S. hegemonic domination of the globe. And I think it's going to work because the United States really cannot militarily defeat Russia and China combined.
What about freedom gas? Freedom gas is not free.
No.
This is what makes me laugh. It's 3 times more expensive. A pipeline is cheaper than having it delivered on ships
barge,
with liquefied natural gas. Like it's not freedom gas, like freedom fries. It's a fraud.
Yes.
What a joke.
Absolutely.
I look at this. I mean, this. This is made up stuff.
Yeah.
By a group of people that are like at the end of their rope. That's what I look at it.
It's desperation.
I don't. Yeah, that's what it is. But you know what? There's some dangerous people, like what Mike Pompeo said.
Oh yeah.
With Venezuela, there's multiple groups of. I mean, it's just, Mike. It's a mixed up group of people. They just. It seems like they don't know what to do right now. That's where I'm coming down to. So I get confused.
Yeah, well, that's why they're pushing for war because they can't think of anything else to do that would work.
And Mike, lastly, before that gentleman from Colorado is beans, tomatoes, and potatoes other than corn. That's you're 30 miles away from the nearest town. Guess what? That town will be coming to you for that food if it's needed. You know why? Because people can't eat aircraft carriers, submarines, and bullets and basically aircraft. They can't eat that. Food trumps all. Pun. There's that pun there. Trump. Have a good show, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot.
Thank you.
We're going to let you go here. And that is going to be an issue. We are facing a real possibility of massive food shortages in this country, especially with the flooding. It's turning out that a great deal of farmland is not going to be planted at all this year.
They can't.
Because of the flooding. The soil is too soft, it's too wet. We've had another levee fail on the Mississippi River. More massive flooding there. And again, anybody who was being objective about the weather and the climate would have seen there was a heavy snowpack from this last winter. And that means there was going to be a heavy flood. And somebody should have said, let's go on out there and make sure that our flood control infrastructure is intact. But no. Governing is choosing, governing is prioritizing, and we've got to build another aircraft carrier. All right, we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we were talking about the massive flooding that's going on, and there was just a little segment on the Fox News. The flooding is so bad, they have shut down the rides on the St. Louis Arch. If you're not already aware of it, you can actually take a little car up to the very top of the arch and get the view. And they have said that is now too dangerous, which tells me they think the water may have compromised the foundations. So it is really a mess. And again, no money for the infrastructure, no money for flood control, but by golly, we've got money for the F-35, and we've got money for the F-22, and we've got money for the Gerald R. Ford, and for this whiz-bang and that whiz-bang, because war is great. I think George Bernard Shaw said it best. There's nothing in man's industry but his greed and his sloth. His heart is in his weapons. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here to Robert in California. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. You're right on with that Bernard Shaw comment. But I was going to go back to the flooding in the Midwest. I've got a couple of buddies that live out there. Actually, one of my friend's moms lives out there in Iowa, and I can tell you, it is worse than people even understand. I mean, they're not really covering just how bad this really is.
No, they
I'm
aren't.
really glad to hear you guys. Yeah, it's just amongst other things. Actually, I intended to call it about politics, and I don't even know where to start. We've got so many things going on right now. Oh, God. I'm coming up against a mental roadblock when I even try to begin. I mean,
where do you start? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we just transferred a bunch of pretty sensitive technology over to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
We could talk about the thing in Yemen, but you guys already covered that. I mean, all this stuff is going on, but the basic populace doesn't want to seem to understand. I keep trying to wake people up every day, but they all seem to insist on wanting to stay asleep. It floors me. I'm living out here in California. I try to talk to my neighbors, and nothing's working. Nothing's working.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get out of here.
I
I'm
hear
starting
you.
to put back a little bit of savings, just like you guys are. I'm planning on exiting this status. But,
Well,
I did want to bring up one thing that...
We don't have any savings. I'm going to have to hold up a bunch of convenience stores
Would
to
you
pay for this
stop
move.
that, dear?
It's true.
No, it's
Yes,
not.
it is. It's true.
Don't pay any
Well,
attention to
I
it.
don't really have any kind of significant savings either, but when you've been poor like I have most of your life, and Art Off the Grid would certainly agree with me on this, you learn to be able to survive with whatever you have.
Yes.
And, you might feel like you've got very little, but you can do a lot with it if you place it accordingly.
Yes.
But I did really want to call in a grievance to one particular thing, Mike.
Okay.
I have not really had the belly to even listen to your show since last Friday, and I apologize for that, but let me tell you why. You allowed Dustin from New Jersey to call back in 3 times. He spent over a half hour on your show. You might as well have just had him on as a guest. We could have got it all out of the way in the first, 30 minutes right there. And I remember your 1 call per rule thing, and I abide by that. I've never called into your show more than once per day, although I may be very opinionated when I do call in.
Okay.
I really do try to let the
All right. Well,
call line
your
stay
point
open
is
for
well
other
taken.
people who might
Absolutely.
also be educated and interested.
Your point is
And,
well taken, and we're going to enforce that rule a little bit more rigidly now, especially after that circus we went through yesterday over genetics and back and forth. But usually I rely on our board op to enforce that rule. And for some reason, Sam decided that what Dustin had to say was relevant and let him on through. And Sam is allowed a great deal of discretion as to what calls get through, and if necessary, what calls get through a second time.
So we're going to be better on that.
We'll try and be better. In every day and every way, we're getting better.
Thank you, dear.
Anything else, Robert?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Okay, Robert, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. I think we had a technical issue there where we lost one side of the line there.
Oh, boy.
All righty. So what is your next story?
The next thing that I'd like to talk about is, in Hebrew, it's called Eretz Israel, and it's the Zionist plan for the Middle East.
Yes.
Now, President Trump has signed off on this in no uncertain terms, that he's going to support Israel's illegal settlements, including to his opposition to UN Security Council Resolution 2334 pertaining to the illegality of the Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. In recent developments, the Trump administration has expressed its recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And apparently, Trump's deal of the century, no drum roll, doesn't deserve one, is supportive of the Greater Israel Project. It consists of the derogation of Palestinians for the right of return by naturalizing them as citizens of Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere regionally. But please,
now they're talking about the refugees there, where they've already been chased out of Israel, and they're in refugee camps. Right. And they're saying, well, as long as you're in a refugee camp in Jordan, we're going to make you a citizen of Jordan. So it's sort of a can't call it genocide, but they're definitely trying to erase them as a people across the region.
Yeah, and have them absorbed in the countries that they've gone into.
Yeah.
And if you've ever taken a look at the existing borders, which are sort of fuzzy with Israel,
Israel draws its borders in dry erase marker.
Yeah, and it's an integral part of U.S. foreign policy, and the strategic objective is to extend U.S. hegemony as well as fracture and balkanize the Middle East. And Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital is intended to trigger political instability throughout the region.
Well, it certainly worked on doing that.
Oh, man, yeah. Apparently, according to the founding father of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, the area of the Jewish state stretches from the brook of Egypt to the Euphrates.
Well, that doesn't come from Herzl. I mean, that's that's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Where, God says that the land of Israel will reach from the Nile to the Euphrates. And if you look at the flag of Israel, that's what the two blue stripes top and bottom represent.
Right. And apparently this Greater Israel project consists of weakening and eventually fracturing neighboring Arab states as part of a U.S.-Israeli expansion project with the support of NATO and Saudi Arabia. And so in this regard, the Saudi-Israeli rapprochement is, from Netanyahu's viewpoint, a means of expanding Israel's fears of its influence in the Middle East as well as confronting Iran. Needless to say, the Greater Israel Project is completely consistent, with America's imperial design. And Mike, what do you think is going to happen if they move this forward? What will the Palestinian people do?
I think there's going to be a regional war. Again, ultimately, we have to deal with the reality that Israel is a nuclear-armed power.
Yeah.
Of course, I think one of the reasons why Israel is so keen on encouraging Syrians to migrate to Europe is to basically empty out that land.
Yeah.
Because that falls inside that map of Greater Israel.
I hear you. I think so. Now, on May 25th, and I don't know how close to reality this is, but Trump declared that the U.S. is sending 1,500 troops, 12 fighter jets, manned and unmanned surveillance aircraft, and a number of military engineers to counter Iran. Mike, what the heck has Iran done?
Iran, unfortunately, refuses to have a private central bank.
Yeah.
Iran is selling their oil for currencies other than the dollar.
Yeah.
And Iran is a regional political rival of Israel. So by golly, they have to go. And that's really what it's about. And they're escalating all of this pressure on Iran. You have the new sanctions that are coming on in.
Oh, yeah, with petrochemical.
And, of course, you have all this saber rattling
Yeah.
with all these weapons that are being built up around the region.
I think that Netanyahu understands he could have an immediate peace with Iran if he wanted to. And that may sound very controversial, but I don't think that the Iranians want war any more than any of the states around them.
No, they're not a warlike people. They just want to be left alone to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, Iran has not initiated a war of conquest against another country in over 200 years, and certainly not since the 1979 Iranian Revolution.
Yeah.
It is Israel that is unable to get along or unwilling to get along with their neighbors. And they continue to have this idea that we demand you recognize Israel's right to exist as a state, but we refuse to recognize your right to exist as a sovereign state. And if Israel were to all of a sudden have an epiphany and decide that maybe peace is better than war, the whole Middle East would just stabilize.
Immediately.
It would all calm down.
Yeah.
Because, it is Israel, aided by the United States, that is keeping that turmoil going.
Yeah, I hear you. And if there is a false flag to be blamed on Tehran, do you have any sense of when both the Americans and Israeli military feel it has to start by?
It could be any time.
Yeah.
I really do think that those attacks on the tankers were intended to be the justification for military action in Iran, but they couldn't get any traction with the story because the American corporate media said, there's no proof here, and we're tired of having our audience destroyed every time we go on out and say Saddam's nukes or Assad sarin gas, and it comes on back. They never really existed. So I'm glad that some of these corporate media people are being a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more cautious, and I think they're trying to make that distinction between, do we continue to serve the America propaganda machine and drive ourselves out of business, or do we start listening to our stockholders about trying to regain our audience by regaining their trust and do our job. Now, that doesn't mean that something more spectacular is not going to happen. I think probably the reason they didn't get any traction with the attacks on those tankers is all 4 tankers remained floating. They didn't leak any oil.
It looked like they'd been attacked with a pea shooter. I mean, forgive me. But that's just about
whatever
what it looked
limpets were put on there, they were very, very small. It's the sort of thing you would use to set off a car bomb, not a giant super tanker. And but we could see something really spectacular happen, and the media would just get caught up in it and say, "Oh, Iran, 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 Iran," and but again. Given that we appear to have had one attempt already, I think there's going to be another try. I don't think it'll be in the shipping lanes this time. That would be too obvious. I think it's going to be something on land. And it may get back to that article you had earlier about this general who says he believes that Iran is a threat to U.S. forces in the region, which means they could basically drop a bomb on a bunch of American kids and wave them around like bloody shirts and say, Iran did this, Iran did this.
And even though Iraq has pledged that they will do their best not to allow American troops to launch a some sort of assault from Iraqi soil, Mike, how strong can that promise be given the broken up nature of Iraq right now?
I imagine that probably the United States would simply re-garrison Iraq and say, go on about your little civilian stuff, leave the war to us. Because that common border between Iraq and Iran, if they're going to do a full frontal ground assault, that is really the best place from which to launch it. But I think probably the Iran war is going to be more of an air and missile campaign that is aimed at taking out centers of power and collapsing the Iranian government, but without destroying all that much of Iran itself, so that a new government can come on in and take over and be up and running almost immediately.
That would be the way it would have to be. But I have to wonder, Mike, about Moqtada Al-Sadr. He is one of the most powerful politicians in Iraq right now, but he holds no position.
Yes.
Because if he feels for 1 second that the people of Iraq are threatened, I seem to remember that there was an organization of which he was head called the Mahdi Army.
Yes.
And what I have read and heard is that he is very much in contact with the leaders of those brigades.
He's getting the band back together.
Getting the band back together. And I have to wonder, you know, if that is what he is doing very quietly, because one does not hear a lot about him criticizing the U.S. position in Iraq right now.
Well, if he really is getting the Mahdi army back together, then he's going to be wanting to keep a low profile.
That would happen. And apparently on May 24th, Michael Gilday, who is the director of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, issued a statement saying that the leadership of Iran at the highest level ordered a spate of disruptive attacks, including those targeting an Aramco Saudi Arabian pipeline, pumping facilities, and the recent sabotage of 4 tankers near the Strait of Hormuz, as well as a 19 May lone rocket attack on the area near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. And besides this, he repeated speculations about credible reports that Iranian proxy groups intend to attack U.S. personnel in the Middle East. But Mike, you know, I have to say to all of those people, I want concrete proof. A lot of our young men and women in military service have died for these kind of falseries and fakeries.
Yes.
You know, and died basically to protect large corporations, the multinational,
Well,
the
yeah,
big ones in the
basically
US.
that's what it is. We're back to Smedley Butler and war is a racket.
Yeah. There's another article that I saw here, which was, I think, commendable on the part, pardon me, listeners, commendable on the part of the city of Atlanta, but not so much on federal task force. Apparently, Atlanta PD has pulled all officers from the federal task forces over body cameras. Now, this comes to us from Police One. Atlanta police will no longer partner on task forces with the FBI, Drug Enforcement Administration, or U.S. Marshals because the federal governments officers will not allow their officers to wear body cams. And the city believes that the public trust we lose from not wearing a body cam is not worth whatever we gain by continuing to serve on these missions without the accountability that body camera can provide.
Okay, and on that note, we have to take a break for our last commercial break. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today on this Pauhana Friday. And Claire, what have you got here?
Well, a very dystopian and very disturbing article. Apparently, the future of school safety includes round-the-clock surveillance of students. Now, these documents were obtained by Education Weekly via open records request, and it shows that over the past year, state agencies have discussed the possibility of sharing a breathtaking amount of data. That included more than 2.5 million records related to Floridians who receive involuntary psychiatric examinations, records for over 9 million people placed in foster care, diagnosis and treatment records for substance abusers, unverified criminal reports of suspicious activities.
I hate that unverified part.
Yeah, I know. Reports on students who were bullied and harassed because of their race or sexual orientation and more. Now, the database is currently on hold as education officials try to figure out how much of this incredibly sensitive data they can share with other agencies, much less collect in the first place. But once these details are ironed out, the rollout will continue, urged along by Governor Ron DeSantis, who has publicly expressed his frustration that schools aren't placing students under round-the-clock surveillance quickly enough. And Mike, if you and I had parents in a public school and we knew that was coming down, that child would be pulled.
My parents were in public school, but it was long before I was born.
I know, but I'm saying.
No, I understand what you're trying to say here. And what they're doing is they're just getting the kids used to being spied on all the time because from now on, that's what it's going to be. I remember when I was a kid back in New Hampshire, early 60s, just started to get into electronics. And I remember in a Popular Electronics, they had this kit for a black and white TV camera. You had to build it yourself. It was $200, and we're talking.
Whoa.
Okay. Today, you can get these little microscopic cameras by the handful. And that's the danger. It has become cost effective to simply spy on everybody. And how they're going to handle that data, as that article says. What do you do with it all, and who should get it? But there are certainly, in my opinion, inadequate controls, especially on that issue about the use of unverified accusations.
That's where it really gets scary. And I'm wondering how long it will take if they launch this full bore. The state of Florida is not looking down the throat of a class action lawsuit by parents who are very concerned about this and their kids' privacy, and they should be.
They absolutely should be because, again, given the cybercrime and the hackers, somebody could break into this database and start picking targets for for grooming or something. All right, there's the music. It's time for us to get on out of here, and please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to RBN. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. Have a really good, safe weekend. We'll be back Monday.
Yes.
Aloha, America.